All right, everybody, I think we're going to get started. Welcome today to our Business for the Common Good B4CG Functional Careers Panel. I'm going to just kind of cover sort of what our flow will be, and then each of our panelists will introduce themselves, and we'll get started kind of on the learning modules of this afternoon. So first of all, my name is Colleen Sauter. I work here at the University of St. Thomas with the Opus College of Business. Our office is the Office of External Relations, and we oversee alumni engagement for the graduate business community, and then industry and corporate engagement, which is a great opportunity then to bring folks like these in to our community. Can I see, just first off, how many students here are first-year freshmen? Okay. How many sophomores? Awesome mix. Juniors? Donut hole. Seniors? All right, so now we know our audience, okay? So let's talk flow today. Our goal is for each of the panelists to introduce themselves. And when they do that, they're going to talk both about their educational background and career path, okay? So that you can kind of see how some people are swimming through one functional area and into another, small company, large company, nonprofit, things of that nature. Then from there, each of them will talk more about their role within the organization that they serve and really do a deep dive in terms of how marketing impacts an organization and how it works and what that span might look and feel like. Another question for all of you. How many of you are pretty sure you know what your major will be or what you think your field will be? Raise your hands. And notice we are not as sure. Okay, so we have a lot of opportunity here today. Last thing, I want to make sure that you interrupt us. We are going to leave a lot of time for questions, all right? So if you have a question for a panelist as they're speaking, just raise your hand, okay? I'd like to be able to get to you with the microphone because we're recording today. Don't be shy. I hope you have lots of questions. And then at the end, we're going to leave about 20 minutes. So we don't want you to walk out the door. And each of our panelists is going to spread out, and you'll already have a sense of what they do. We want you to feel free to come and ask your specific questions, right? What classes should I take? What skills? You know, any advice? Do you know anybody? All those kinds of things. That's what we'll do today. Sound good? Cool. All right. Well, Jax, let's start with you.
Hello, everybody. My name is Jacques Capallo. I'm MBA class of 2003. So just wanted to talk to you a little bit about my career path, so how I get what I am. So I was born in West Africa, Togo, a small country of 7 million people. In Togo, we do speak French. And when I finished high school, I got a scholarship to go to school in Germany. So I went to school in the University of Wuppertal. It's very close to Düsseldorf. So where I studied economics. After I graduated from that college, I came here to St. Thomas to do my MBA. And then while I was doing my MBA, I went to the Career Center in Minneapolis. And at the time, the job opening were published in a journal. There were no internet at the time. There were internet, but it wasn't commonly used for job posting and all that. So I looked at the journal and I saw an internship position open at TCF National Bank. It was in internal audit. I was interested. I read the job description. I was interested. And I typed up my resume and I did a nice cover letter and I faxed that over. So remember, I didn't email that because that was foreign at the time. So a couple of days later, I received a phone call and they wanted to interview me. So I went in for an interview and then they hired me as an intern in internal audit. So this is how my career started. I stayed within the department for the next 5 years and I got hired as a full-time junior auditor. I progressed through the rank and I left there after 5 years as an internal audit supervisor. And then I got a job with Nestlé Corporation. They are based in Switzerland. They were looking for auditors to send to across the world to do audit work. So I get hired by Nestle. I was sent in the region of West Africa to do some audit work there. So I was there for 2 years, then came back to the United States. And then after that assignment, I got other opportunity to work in internal audit. I work mainly in banking and insurance. So I work for companies such as TCF National Bank, Wells Fargo, those big corporations. And then most recently, for the past 5 years, I have been working at Meta Bank. They are based in Sioux Falls. So I was the chief audit executive. As you can see, started as an intern way back then in 2003. And then in the past 5 years, I have been working as a chief audit executive, responsible for the internal audit department. I had a team of 35 people who report to me. So I led the whole internal audit department. So this is, in a nutshell, what happened in the last 20 years. So I try to summarize that for you very quickly. So what I want to leave you with is that when I started as an intern, I wasn't really sure what I wanted to be. Even when I saw the position, internal audit, what was that? I just applied. But when I started, the job, I fell in love with it. I love it. So that's all what I did for the past 20 years. So, I'm gonna stop here. Looking forward to having a conversation with you about internal auditing. But again, as you can see, I'm representing accounting. We are not talking about careers yet. We're talking about how do I get here. I'm gonna be more than willing to talk to you about the different aspect of auditing. There's different aspects of it. There's IT auditing, there's operational auditing, there's accounting auditing, there's all kind of auditing that we can talk to you about today. So I'm looking forward to having this conversation with you. That's good. Did I miss anything?
Nope.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. So hi, everybody. Janine Karras-Hool. I graduated from St. Thomas undergrad in 2012. So I was here in this building for my second semester senior year. And then I graduated from my MBA from St. Thomas as well in 2017. So Colleen gave me a button last week at the Tommy Johnny game, so I am a double Tommy, so that's exciting. And I started, I knew I wanted to get into business when I was a freshman. I think the question was what type of business I wanted to get into. Was it finance? Was it accounting? And I think to me, those were my strengths. Numbers were my strength. And so it was sometimes hard for me to navigate, right, which path to take. But I ultimately decided that finance was really the route that I wanted to take personally. And so, and a lot of it was different conversations that I had with panelists like here and also different conversations with professors. So I think that really enabled me to decide which function I wanted to go into. And after I graduated undergrad, I went to Delta Airlines, where I was a financial analyst. I was located right here in Minneapolis, and headquarters were in Atlanta. So I think I got a very different perspective being at a non-headquartered location to really understand the inner workings. And I was with Delta Connections. So if you ever fly Delta and you see on your ticket or on your phone, because we don't print out tickets anymore really, is Delta Airlines, and this is operated maybe by Endeavor Air or SkyWest Airlines. And so I was really responsible for helping all the financials and doing financial reporting, month-end close as well, forecast plan, and I was there for about 3 years and moved up pretty quickly. So I was a financial analyst, senior financial analyst, and a financial specialist within the 3 years I was there. And after that, realized that I really wanted to get my MBA to be able to further progress my career fairly quickly, and so went back to St. Thomas to get my MBA because I knew everything that I learned foundationally from undergrad was really beneficial for me, and I could truly point to especially certain professors that had a great impact, not just during my time at St. Thomas, but that I could reach out to afterward as well. And then went full-time for my MBA, and between my first and second year of MBA, I interned at Ecolab. I had a great experience. It was a 10-week internship, and then afterward got an offer to come back as a finance manager. So that was how I propelled my career just a little bit quicker, and most recently became a senior finance manager within the last few months. So I would say my education really has allowed, and hard work obviously, has allowed me to continue my path. And I would say we're going to get into, again, a little bit deeper on, but I am in a role that's called marketing finance, right? So a lot of people think that accounting and finance overlap, which they do, absolutely, depending on your organization, right? I work a lot with sales. I work a lot with marketing. I work a lot with R&D, supply chain, demand planners, right? So having that finance knowledge still has really helped me being able to broaden the work that I want to do later on in my career. But more than happy to answer any of those questions as we get deeper in, especially at Ecolab, because I will plug, we do recruit for undergrad, both for internship and full-time, that you can kind of get a good sense of different areas to explore at a company.
I can go.
You're getting the pack.
I'm getting the pack. Good morning, or actually it's good afternoon. Sorry, I'm a little late. Ran across an accident on 94. But I should always be on time, right? So, Mike Kuyak, I'm the president and CEO of a medical device company located in Maple Grove. I have kind of a non-traditional path to getting into business. I graduated from the University of South Dakota with a double major in chemistry and physics, and was gonna get my PhD in physics, laser physics, and went and checked out a couple programs, and I said, I can't hang with these people the rest of my life and be in a lab. So I actually got into pharmaceutical sales and worked my way up with Hoffman LaRoche over 8 years, and eventually up into a senior leadership role there in sales management. Branched over into the provider side of healthcare, and then moved into the biomedical or biotech area, both in sales leadership and marketing leadership. In my mid-30s, I made a decision to move from the commercial side or the sales side into the marketing side. And actually, one thing I would encourage all of you to do as you plot your careers and you get into your careers is to move around organizations and move around in different companies and try different things, because I think, speaking from a general management and operations perspective, that kind of gave me a really well-rounded background. So I worked for a local company here in 2000 in med device. That was my first experience in medical device, working for American Medical Systems. I went from a VP of sales down to a product manager job. So, because I wanted to get into marketing and get more operational experience. So sometimes in life, you have to make decisions around income levels and stuff. And so I made a decision to significantly decrease my income level, but to get that marketing experience within a med device. And the trade-off is paid back in many-fold and given me a good background in operational leadership. So I was with AMS and did the upstream and downstream product marketing. The nice thing about product marketing is you get a chance, you had commented about how you get a chance to work with finance, with operations, with clinical research, development, what have you, and did that for a number of years, and then became a director of marketing, and then branched into, at the point in time, I said, well, I really would like to get into operational leadership, and a mentor of mine encouraged me to go back and get my MBA. Since I had not had one business school, my business school was the School of Hard Knocks and actually learning along the way. So I came back to St. Thomas and entered and got went into the executive management MBA program. Learned a lot there, met a lot of really nice, different background colleagues from anywhere from working for Delta Airlines to working for a train company to working for General Mills. It was a really nice cohort experience. And then from there, I still was at AMS and went into general management. I was running a $130 million business for AMS, and then we sold that business to Boston Scientific. So I got a lot of experience in business development, doing that and integrating and working and putting two organizations together. And then branched off into the startup world, and this is my second startup. in med device. We sold our last company to Boston Scientific just last May, and this is a spinoff. And so this is, I was employee number 4, and we had to go out and raise $21 million from venture capital. And right now we're in the early development of developing a game-changing product to treat prostate cancer in men. So that's a little bit about my background, and I'll be happy to share with you, any of my perspectives and answer any questions you might have later on. Thank you.
I find it just as fascinating to listen to everybody else on the panel, and I'm learning from their past as well. My name is Jen O'Toole. I work for Taylor Corporation in Human Resources. So my path, I thought my path was a little colorful, but no, I don't think I can follow Mike as well. But I started out my undergrad is from St. Cloud State. I originally started as an accounting major. I also knew I wanted to do business, but so started in accounting, decided though numbers I did but not the accounting field. I went into marketing and advertising with graphic design. And so I thought that was going to be my career path until I got an opportunity to do an internship, which was in human resources. And I thought, oh, what the heck? I just want to get some business experience. So I tried that, and then they sold me on what that function was all about, changed my major, and graduated with human resources degree in the business school at St. Cloud. So as I went for my internship, I don't know if I was so excited about the field as much as I was just about working and finally getting to apply the things that I had been learning for years. But I did enjoy what I was doing, and I ended up staying where I did the internship, and that was at Federal Cartridge Company. If any of you guys are in the hunting hobby sports, that's the ammunition company up in Anoka. I was there for about 8 years and went through kind of just what's called an HR generalist type role. I also took on some specialties in compensation and HRIS, which is now human capital management systems. That's the systems that track all of the data that we have on employees in all of our companies. After that, I moved into a management role in another organization where I was able to kind of take more of a leadership role with a staff of about 7. Learned at that point how to support organizations remotely around the company. I supported 9 locations across the country and took up travel for a hobby. As I learned that, which was a little bit fun. Also, during that period of time, I was involved in many mergers and acquisitions. So that was a whole new education in how companies come together and separate and dissolve, how plants open and close, all of those things all at one time in the course of a couple years. That unfortunately burned me out a little bit because I was doing a corporate job as well as a kind of a merger and acquisition travel consultant. And I moved into a totally different field for a while, related but totally different. I moved into what's called a HR business consultant with Lawson Software. They used to have the big, nice building downtown. Now they're in 4, still there, but different ownership. So I essentially went into sales. Where I was taking the industry experience or the functional experience I had in human resources and applied it to selling software, which I had worked on in my companies. And I was doing product demonstrations and helping companies make their selections for their HR capital management systems. So that really took me down an interesting path. I didn't really know whether or not I would go back into the HR functional space again. I loved sales. It was actually quite fun. I never expected to like that. But getting out with clients was actually really a critical development piece of my career. Along the way there, I developed a specialty in what's called the partner sales, which is a different element of sales where you're selling. A company might have a sales force of their own, but they also work with what's called reselling partners to maybe sell to a different market that allows them to essentially increase their sales force in a specialty area that they don't have to do. So I work with our reselling partners and was able to get that level of expertise, and then was recruited by another company to actually manage their channel partner program. Excuse me. So that was an experience that while I was kind of uniquely qualified for it, because it was also in the human resources space, the business was, I was now in a function completely technically removed from the function I started in, which was a very big learning opportunity for me. But what I decided at that point was that was too far down a path that I was not interested in going down for an extended part of my career. So you do have these learning opportunities as you go through, and you can always adjust. And you should, what I learned was it's okay to take the risk and do something different, but you do not ever lose what you've had in your experiences. So after that, I actually took a break from working for other people, and I had several of my own small businesses. And I probably did that for 5 years, and moved across the country to do a couple different things. And then when I came back to Minnesota, I decided I think it's time to maybe try getting back into the human resources space again. I'd had enough of a break where it was now fresh and new again for me. So I went to work for a couple different small companies, supporting their full human resources functions. When you're in a smaller company in some functions, and I think that's pretty much across the board, you're more of a jack of all trades, as opposed to in a larger company where you often have a more specialized role. So I was doing a more jack of all trades kind of human resources role in a couple smaller companies, including one startup with less than 30 employees. And then I moved into a larger organization, Taylor Corporation, which has got about 13,000 employees globally, and basically have moved from a kind of a full service HR to what's called a human resources business partner. And while we'll talk a little bit more about the specific functions of that, it allows me to take on a whole different segment or a whole different perspective on how do you work with the people in your organizations. So I'll talk more about the job in the next segment, but that's kind of how I got where I am today.
Okay. Hi, my name's Kate Moore. It's funny, I have a similar journey, I think, to Mike in terms of the executive MBA, but I'll start. So born and raised Minnesota, St. Cloud. I'm a double Tommy, by the way. Just want you to know. I didn't know there was a designation for that, but apparently there was a designation for that. So I graduated from St. Thomas in, I'll have to say, 1983. So I just dated myself, but that's okay because that's part of my journey, right? And so I graduated with a business administration with a focus in marketing and sales. So I really, in that time of my life, wanted to figure out, well, what do I like to do? And I sort of, you sort of do some introspective thinking about what inspires you, what keeps you getting up every day. And part of that is talking with people. So sales and marketing seem to be a good fit for me. So I started my very first job at West Publishing, which is now in Eagan, but at the time it was in downtown St. Paul. And I worked there in a sales operation. Well, first of all, customer service, and I won't even tell you about the technology. If anybody knows what a modem coupler is, you'll know what I started with. There were no such things as cell phones or anything like that, not even BlackBerries. But my point is that I had an opportunity to start in customer service, and one of the things is finding ways to move around in an organization so you can learn more. I went into sales operations, and then I met at that time, my future husband, and he was in LA. So I moved to LA, and I got into the hospitality business, working for Marriott Corporation in sales. They are doing at the LAX Marriott, which is really, again, it's totally different than my experience working in sales operations at West Publishing. And then we had our first child in California, decided it was time to pack up our toys and go back home to something more around our family. So we went to Cincinnati. My husband is an attorney, so you can see the path from Westlaw. We both worked for LexisNexis. However, he was in Cincinnati's sales office, and I was in the home office in Dayton, Ohio. We lived somewhere in between, and I was in another sales operations mode, and I was also working with the client, and the client at that time is the legal librarian. So, bringing those clients gives you experience. I mean, when you get a chance to actually talk to the end customer, it's really a great experience to understand how are we helping you in your business. From there, we came back to Minnesota, and at that time, it was in the economics or the economy at that time. There were several years with a series of layoffs. So I went through a layoff, and I will tell you, you survive layoffs, you grow from layoffs. So I was laid off, and the day I got a job, my husband got laid off. So we both got into, you start to learn a little bit about the types of companies you want to work with, the type of risk you want to live with. So where that plays into, do you like a big company that has a lot more structure, governance? Your role may be very specific in who you serve and your role in the organization, whereas a smaller organization, you're probably wearing a lot more hats and doing a lot more things and a lot more diversity in your job. There's also could be some risk depending upon that job. But I encourage you in your journey to try both sides, because you will find one that you like better. I happen to like working for big companies better. My husband happens to like working for small organizations better. So again, that's one sort of decision point I think you'll find in your career. So I worked for Carlson Vaughan Travel. Once I got back on, took the next job in my career, which actually was just a couple months, which I was thankful for. And, that whole, should I get my MBA? Should I get my MBA? And one of the things that you think about is, the time that I want to advance my career is probably the next time I need the next level of education. So at this time, I was raising a family, and it was just not a good time. And I was advancing in my career. I was a VP, still in a sales support function, working with RFPs with large corporations doing their travel, so the business travel, if you will. So from there, I went to United Healthcare, and I got that opportunity through an organization called Mentium. Mentium is where you're mentored by a more senior level executive. So I was the mentee, and my mentor happened to be an executive from United Healthcare. Now, there's not supposed to be any poaching or anything like that, but it just happened that later on, after that opportunity, or that experience with my mentor, I had the opportunity to get a job at United Healthcare. So up until that time, my tenure at each of those organizations was about 4.5 to 5 years, and it seemed like it was time for me to go find my next job. And I think it's okay to know when you should make those next advancements. I will say I was at United Healthcare for 13 years. However, during those 13 years, I did hit a point where I realized in order to make the next move in my career, I needed to get my MBA. So I, like Mike, went back to St. Thomas and went to executive MBA, had a great cohort. We graduated in 2014. And so, you still can get your MBA when you're in your 50s. So, or when you turn 50, let me say that. It's okay. It works out. But from that experience, I then took, when I was at United, and we'll talk more about function, but there my role really was working with brokers. So let me just, as far as United Healthcare, that's an insurance company. So now I'm in insurance, specifically around employee benefits. I talk to people in HR a lot, and specifically HRIS systems, things like that, where I care about her problems as it relates to how she takes care of the benefit selection for her employees, to just sort of give you a synopsis of the job or the role I have. But you work through a broker. So just like you have a broker or a realtor or any of those, it's someone who can help the employer make good decisions across an array of options. So you have United Healthcare, Aetna, Cigna, and several other healthcare-related brands that you need to buy your insurance options from. So I worked with brokers a lot. And I had the opportunity, there was a pretty substantial moment in 2010 called the ACA Act, and I don't expect you all to know that. I just, at some point, when you have jobs, you'll understand this whole policy and government-related change. It changes the world of healthcare quite a bit. And at that time, I had several brokers who said, can we start I want to start a company. I want to start a company that takes independent employee benefits agencies, brokers, who do business in different parts of the country. They don't compete against each other, but we could do something really cool. And we need your help, Kate. So I worked with those employee benefit agency owners for 9 months building an operating agreement. So something that I had never done before, but knew I had experience in what that might look like and what that experience might play out in the actual healthcare field. So we built an organization. They went off and capitalized a company called C2 Solutions. I went back to my day job at United Healthcare, and a year later, then they called me back and said, well, can you come run that? So I was CEO of C2 Solutions, a small organization. So back to that point I made, big company, small company, has very pros and cons to it. But so I ran that company for 5.5 years. And in essence, what I was doing was building a national practice across 6 different business entities where the governance is, they have their own ownership, they own and capitalize C2. So they're all equal owners, if you will. From that, just a year ago, I moved to Marsh McLennan Agency. And Marsh McLennan Agency is a very, very large, is part of a very large company called Marsh McLennan Companies. So Marsh, who's the global leader in risk management, does property and casualty, and we are the employee benefits arm of Marsh. But then if you've Mercer, which I'm sure you've heard of Mercer, some of these very large organizations. So I have the benefit now of working in a global company, which brings so many different experiences and opportunities to the table. So again, I'll talk more about the functions, but that's been my journey, and I encourage you all, as you think about your journey, think about what do you love to do and the profession that you choose. And if it's not the right one, like Mike said, it's time to shift early, right? Get some additional education. But size and industries are really important in that early part of your journey. Thanks.
Thanks, Kate. All right, so I read an article last week that said every 30 minutes you're supposed to stand up. So I'm just going to give you guys a little. So let's everybody stand up. All right, stretch it out a little bit. Get the blood going. All right. All right, Anthony Wickner. I actually am also a graduate of St. Thomas on a double pin or whatever you guys call it. But I went to Augsburg for my undergraduate in finance, wanted to be an investment banker. Didn't work out. Piper Jaffray was bought by U.S. Bancorp, so I was scrambling for an internship. And I, too, worked at West Publishing, but I was post-acquisition. A guy I coached hockey for, his family moved to Minnesota. He was the COO, so gave me a job in finance, corporate finance. And after a couple of years, I realized I didn't want to just do finance. So is it Janine, right?
Yes.
So like you, I realized I wanted to kind of branch out and not just be a finance doing the corporate finance roles. So at that time was a dot-com boom. So companies were just throwing money at kids to go back to school, almost shoving you into school. So I was fortunate enough to ride that wave since I had to pay for my undergraduate degree. Took advantage of Thompson paying the full bill and went to evening MBA, did that over 3 years. And then I moved over into marketing. So at Thompson at the time I was there, marketing ran the P&L for the company. So I was in a $400 million business unit, doing a variety of things, building different products, working with the sales team to make sure that they were optimized so they could close. We had about 700 sales reps out there, so working with those groups was a great lesson learned. Did an ERP implementation of SAP, and I think what I realized at that time is, I think what a lot of the panelists have here said is, I would say follow your gut, but don't react. I would say do what your gut tells you to do, but then make a plan related to it. So what I wanted to do is I wanted to run a business unit, and so I knew I had to check several boxes. Finance was a great base for me because I think that in this day and age, especially for all of you coming out of school in the next couple of years, analytics are a big deal, and I think that you have to really be able to look at the numbers And so I think that's an important base out there. But I think after that, you have to kind of figure out what really kind of motivates you, what's your passion, and where you're going to put the most effort in. So when you wake up every day, you just vault out of bed and you want to kind of hit the ground running and go after it, and just like a dog to a bone. So got my MBA, got recruited at that time by several companies after I finished up. And I'd done my years, I promised I would at Thompson. Another thing, too, is I'd make sure that you keep good relationships with the companies that you're with, because there's going to be people who move around in those companies into other areas. And with the power of LinkedIn, you can stay networked with everybody, just like you can with Instagram or Facebook. So make sure you don't burn any bridges, and I didn't. I made sure I kind of crossed my T's, dotted my I's, fulfilled my requirement to Thompson. Was recruited over to a company called Tennant at that time, Golden Valley Cleaning Solutions Company. Did sales and marketing operations for them. Did another SAP implementation for them. Introduced a lot of different lead management, compensation systems. So really learned the underbelly of how companies work and what they need. And then I was fortunate enough, the CFO really enjoyed me. That's another thing, and I think Kate alluded to it, is finding a mentor, a mentor who can guide you along. I had a great one at Thomson Reuters, and I had a great one at Tennant. The CFO really liked me. He pulled me into his acquisitions group. And I said to him, like, well, I'm not really a finance guy. I can't do like accounting stuff. I mean, I can analyze anything you want. He goes, M&A is not really about the numbers. We will find people to do that. M&A is really about finding out how it's going to fit within our organization, doing some different modeling, and at the same time, the courtship of the companies to go after. So from 07 to 09, did all the strategy work. We looked at about 30 companies and closed 7 transactions, and then the recession hit, took me out of that. Ran a business for about 18 months, $12 million business unit that was in the red. Turned it around. Then my last box to check was to do sales. So did sales for my last couple of years at Tennant. Some leadership changes forced me to move elsewhere. So I was with a company called Ameripride, ran their corporate sales division, about a $90 million sales division. They were acquired by Aramark, wanted me to move to Chicago, said no thank you. So like Kate said, I wanted to see what the small business world was like. Thomson Reuters is massive, Tennant's over $1 billion, Ameripride was $700 million. So wanted to see what small businesses were like. So I made a concerted effort to move to a small company. So I'm with a $40 million food company now, most prominently known for Good Sense and Salad Pizzazz. We're in every retail area across the country. And I think Jen alluded to, being kind of a smaller company, you do a lot of different things. So I run sales and marketing, customer service, ran the distribution center, product development. So you wear a lot of hats. And so when you want to do something, you have to kind of look at yourself and figure out how much bandwidth will you have to take on stuff. So it's been a fun ride. I learned a lot kind of in that environment. So I'll kind of hand it back to Colleen.
I want to know if there's questions. Anybody? Yay!
The brave one.
Right.
Good job.
Bonus points.
Okay, I have a question for my uncle. Hey, uncle, by the way.
Well placed.
What's like the most challenging thing you have to face as an accountant for your company?
Yeah. I wouldn't say challenging, I would say opportunity, because I look at life more like an opportunity. So as you move through your career, you're going to find a lot of things, that is going to come at you. Don't look at them as challenge, because they're always going to be there. So one of the challenges that I have in my career is being able to adapt, because there are always situations, because as an auditor, as part of the accounting function, internal audit is part of that. So as part of internal auditors, you always have to adapt. You have to be adaptable. So internal audit is the only place in an organization that have access to every department. When you are in internal audit, you are auditing the whole company. You are auditing HR, sales. You're auditing, customer service. You're auditing all of the aspects of the company. So if you're not sure what you want to be tomorrow, you have a degree, you are not sure, if you join internal audit, that experience would allow you to try different things out. You do an audit on customer service, you can do an audit on marketing, you will do an audit on even accounting, you will do an audit on, different things in the company. You will also have an opportunity to build a relationship with people during those audits. You have an opportunity to see what those departments are like. And then you can decide one day, oh, I like this, I like that, and you can move to those departments. So internal audit can do that. So throughout my career, I've seen a lot of people who use internal audit as a stepping stone to really choose a career, where they went and they become successful. I would say throughout my career, just to answer your question, there have been a lot of opportunity. You just have to buckle down and just, face them and, have great mentors to help you through those things.
There's one back there, too.
Okay, well, I've kind of heard the saying, like, connections is everything. Well, to kind of all of you, is this statement true?
Yes.
Yes. I can talk very quickly about it too. At Delta, when I was in finance, I worked cross-functionally with our commercial team, and they were responsible for all negotiations that we had with our contract carriers, right? And I ran the financials for that. The leader of that organization worked at Delta, or worked at Ecolab, and works there right now. I received an internship at Ecolab, and he ended up being my manager for that summer. So, to the point of, dot your I's, cross your T's, right? You never want to leave a company ill will or anything like that. Your name is your brand, right? Your name you take with you regardless what corporation or what business or what company, however you want to phrase it, if you start your own too, your name will carry you with you throughout every part of your career, and that is extremely important because he remembered the work that I did, right? And now he's a mentor to me at Ecolab still, watching out for me. Janine, why don't you look at this job? Why don't you take this career path? How about this opportunity, right? It's those people that also look out for you because you have built that brand, and it's through that connection.
Yeah, and make sure it's like a substance. So make sure your connections, that if you build them, build some depth. Like, don't just add 2,000 connections. I would say build relationships, and everything is kind of tit for tat. So anytime you do a networking relationship, obviously you might want something out of it, but I would also make sure you offer something back, because I think it's going to be more substantive then, and they'll look at you a lot differently. And I think that it's going to help you downstream.
I just want to add a comment around mentoring because I may have started with a mentoring through an organization, but when I was at United Healthcare, I identified leaders that I respected, but I didn't report to, but knew of my brand. And that, I'm glad you brought that up, because your brand is actually has a lot to do with your integrity and who you are. It's your reputation. Okay, and that follows you through your relationships. So one of the things when you select, if you identify a mentor, and I identified 3 in my time at United Healthcare, I had a separate meeting with them. I asked their permission and invited, and said, "Would you be my mentor?" And in doing that, it opens up an entirely different dialogue for you. And that person can be in the organization or outside the organization. It can be a connection, perhaps, to, especially at your juncture right now. It could be one of your, it could be a parent's friend. In fact, I got a phone call from a friend of mine who said, "Hey, I have this young gal she's a senior or junior senior, and I don't recall. It's not St. Thomas." But she's looking at event management, and I have a strong hospitality business, so I'm going to sit down and have an informational discussion with her. So it's those kinds of things I think that can be helpful. But don't think that it stops when you get your job. You should always be building your network. And I want to add one more point. You should always first in a network think about, what can I do for you? Don't think about what can I get from you. What can I do for you? because the more you approach your relationships, your business relationships in that format, when you need something, they're lined up for you, and everybody will work to help you solve your issue. Okay?
Yeah, and I would just add one additional thought on that is, I remember my first, I've had many mentors, but one thing I learned is later in life, I didn't have a finance background before I got my MBA, and one of the things I did seek out was, a finance mentor, and they helped me a lot of, how do you read a P&L statement? How do finances work in an organization? And don't be afraid to go out of your comfort zone and learn, from a mentor that way.
I just also wanted to make a quick comment about that. So I do realize that we are all different. Some people are introverted, some people are extroverted. So if you are extroverted, it's easier for you to network, to find a mentor and all that. But if you are introverted, you really have to work hard at it because, like you can hear all of the panelists saying, relationship is all what it is. So it's not, it's good to be really good at what you do. But if you are really, really good at what you do and you go to work, you put your head down, you do your job good, only your department will give you a kudos, right? So, but if you build a good relationship, more people will know how good you are, and that will help you throughout your career. So make an effort to really get out of your, comfort zone and build a relationship to advance your career.
And I'll just finish, I'll just add, I'm not going to add because they all said everything that is really important. But one thing, you're all sitting in here and you're younger than anybody else sitting up at the panel. When we talk about making connections with people, especially in mentorship relationship, you're thinking, oh, it's always got to be someone with more experience. And what am I going to have as I enter the workforce to offer to somebody else that I might want to make a connection with? But don't sell yourself short. You all have experiences. You're all coming in with perspectives that other people don't have, and they welcome that as well. So don't think that because you don't have 5 or 10 or 15 years of experience, you don't have anything to offer, because your experiences will help somebody else, even somebody with more experience than you have.
So most of you have an MBA. Do you think for today and us when we graduate, will that help us go on further in our jobs?
I'm going to, if you don't mind, I'll take the first one. I'm sure everybody's got a response. I would say that MBAs are extremely helpful in how you look at business because it broadens your thinking. But when you do that is probably more important, because what I've found is that if you go right from undergrad to MBA, you don't have any life experience yet or business experience yet in which to apply what you just learned. I will tell you that just my experience in waiting to get my MBA, I had so much perspective that helped me align what I was learning to real life situations. So I guess my only message is don't feel like you have to get it right after. I think it's more valuable getting a little bit of work experience and then going to get your MBA.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think the other thing is, if you just think about the evolution of our society, you think back 100 years ago, maybe 5% of the people were college educated, where now, I don't know what the stat is, I'm sure you guys know here, the number's astronomical, the number of kids that are getting undergraduate degrees. So what does it do? It forces some element of differentiation. So if you think about the last 10 to 15 years, there's been a massive amount of people who've gotten MBAs or postgraduate sort of work done. So there's going to be ways you have to continue to differentiate yourselves. Even up on the panel, I plan to work for another 20 years. I'm going to have to stay focused to make sure I sharpen my tools because I have to make sure I'm differentiated. So I agree 100% with what Kate said. I think, I first started about 4 years before I went in. I learned a lot about myself because you get all this conceptual, theoretical stuff that you learn here, and then you get a chance to go out and apply it. You learn a lot about yourself. You learn a lot how you fit into the organization, and then you can figure out how you're going to apply the MBA. And then you start to kind of cross over the practical knowledge that you're learning day in and day out, with more conceptual ideas that you're going to learn in your MBA environment.
Yeah, I would just add that, one of the benefits of being, I'll sell St. Thomas a little bit just because I did have we all have choices when we go through those types of programs, and there are good programs in other universities, but the St. Thomas program from my perspective offers a very personalized educational approach. And when I say personalized, I mean you get to know the people that you're in your classroom with. You're not in there with 150 other people. You're building those relationships, and when you take the time and you're working with people in your classes that have anywhere from 2 to 10 to 15 or 20 years of experience, you don't only just have your instructor in the front of the room, but you have a classroom full of other people that you're learning from. And I think that's a critical thing that you should look for if you are exploring that next step in your education.
And I just got one more other point is don't be afraid to start your MBA, pre-MBA, before you actually decide to go back to school. I mean, I spent 20 years trying different positions and operation things. I mean, I started in sales, moved into marketing, moved into leadership, and then went over into supply chain, or into operations, did some finance stuff. Don't be afraid to raise your hand and jump into an integration of two organizations. You'll learn so much that way. So I kind of did 20 years of pre-MBA work before I really decided to go back and officially get my MBA. And it made me more well-rounded for my cohort experience too with other people.
So Michael, speaking of operations, are you willing to do a bit of a deep dive just in terms of the function, what you think the skill set should be for folks who are, thinking about that space and going, what is it?
Yeah, so, at the end of the day, what builds an organization are the people. And hiring the right people and keeping and getting the right people on the bus or in an organization, and making sure that people who don't want to be there, that you exit them out of the organization from an operations perspective, and finding the right people who actually are your subject matter experts. So, for example, in our company, we've got 20 employees. We have a head of R&D who, at the end of the day, is making the decisions as it relates to the R&D, and he is the subject matter expert in R&D. In clinical research, we have a woman who is the subject matter expert in clinical research. And when building a team and being kind of the lead operations person, which I kind of look at myself as, is it's important to make sure that everyone has equal voice, and they understand they have equal voice, and egos and titles are left at the door in our organization. It doesn't matter if you're the CEO. I always tell my story. If the toilet paper needs to be changed in the bathroom, guess who's changing the toilet paper? Myself. You have to really set, from an operations perspective, look at the people you surround yourself with and surround people around you who are stronger in the different functional areas. In med tech, our functional areas are, from an operations, is we have manufacturing, which includes supply chain. So we have vendors who sell us things and prefab things that we have to incorporate into our medical device. So we have people that have to be very detail-oriented and working with partners to make sure the parts that they're supplying are very high quality, right? We have a manufacturing partner. We have a person that oversees all of manufacturing. We have a small finance group that has to manage all of the billables and receivables and all of that. And you have a marketing organization that's thinking about what's the unmet need that we're trying to solve, or the problem we're trying to solve, and working with the engineers. So from an operations perspective, it's really putting all the right people together and having a vision for the organization, and really using them to establish your mission, vision, and values of the organization. I don't know if that answered your question or not.
It did, thank you.
Okay.
So Anthony, Kate, we talked a little bit before the students arrived today that we've got the marketing function and the sales function. Do you think the two of you could kind of tag team on how they differ, how they intersect? We have a new team that's just formed.
New team, okay. Well, actually, I think what I said is sales and marketing get along really well. It's sales and finance that don't get along really well. So there's sort of, when you think about sales, that's your front line bringing in customers, right? No matter what business you're in. The marketing side of it can have a multiple sort of meaning to it, because you can think of marketing as your brand, you can think of it as your advertising, you can think of it as your sales support, in terms of your sales operations, if you will, who really work with a client. So I sort of couple those two. And I think that actually those two work so tightly together to be successful, because you need your sales operations team when you're out in the field and you're calling on customers and you're trying to, there's a whole methodology to how you sell, and it's something that makes sales, helps salespeople be successful. And I just heard, Mike use the term that's so important, is what need are we trying to fill? And so when you're in a sales organization or you're a salesperson, we have this terminology like, don't show up and throw up. I'm sure you'll hear that in your career if you're going out. What that means is you come in and all you do is you pitch your wares. You're not listening to what the customer needs. So what happens is, sales, you are out trying to understand what are the needs of the customer. And then from that, you come back to your marketing department and say, we got a huge gap. And marketing can also be product development, right? So what that side of the house is doing is we're getting the voice of the customer, we're bringing it back to the home office or back to the corporation. You're bringing your marketing and product development teams together. You're thinking about, can we create something to solve a problem that a customer has or a prospect has? Let's say you do, you build it. Then you have a marketing team that might have to do marketing research on that customer, on how it should be priced, what's the price sensitivity, all of the elements of being able to package that product in a way that it's going to be, you can sell it, right? And it's solving a problem for a customer. Now, as it comes to finance, if you don't mind, I'm just going to shift and tell you in my perspective how finance. The reason I say that is when you're selling to a customer, you know what your competition is doing, so you try not to make promises of, well, I can get that to you for this price or, or that, whatever it might be. So you sort of, you are also the marketplace. You're bringing the marketplace back to the company to tell them what is the price that particular thing's selling for. And we have to make this product that fit in that, unless it's differentiated in such a way that you can ask for more because you're adding more value. So finance, there's a very, I highly encourage you, if you're going into sales, marketing, finance should be your friend. Make them your friend. Bring them in early because they hate surprises. They really want to be a part of the conversation, and I love the fact that Jeannie would say that she works with salespeople, so she has to understand the business needs, and then, it's sort of, they have to help us figure out how to make those numbers work. So, I'll leave it at that.
So I think great job, Kate. I would say also sometimes sales and operations can have a little bit of rub with each other because, sales, they just want to close the business. I mean, ultimately, they have the ultimate scorecard because everybody watches sales, everybody watches revenue. That's what make the company go overall. So a lot of times you'll see a little bit of rub between sales and operations. But I think if you have a good relationship there and you know what the objectives are for operations, I mean, I want operations to succeed. I want to make sure that we can fulfill our product to them. The other thing I would say about sales and marketing, I thought Kate did a really nice job. But, really, to me, I look at marketing is that they're looking at really the company's strategy and the vision. And what they're looking at is kind of like a 3 to 5 year horizon. They're saying, hey, here's, based on what we have to make, based on kind of what we are, this is where we want to play. And then sales really owns the customer at the end of the day because they're the ones that have to kind of close the business. And so I agree with Kate, there needs to be a good synergy there. There's also nice hybrid roles. If the business wants to take on a new market or they're introducing a new adjacent product to the market, they'll hire a business development. So a lot of times you'll see business development, they're a little bit of a hybrid role because you need to have that sort of marketing experience. They have to understand the market, the landscape, the competition, all those sort of things. Because I break marketing into 3 areas. You have your strategic marketing, kind of what I was alluding to, where they set the strategy. You have your product management, product marketing, where they really understand your competitors' products and how you differentiate. And the last thing is like the integrated marketing, where the collateral, the website, Kate was alluding to the advertising, however you're going to advertise your products and services. So the business development is a nice hybrid role for that, where you're going to look at new market expansion. And then eventually it'll kind of tuck into kind of the run-of-the-mill business and what sales does. So I'm guessing that our finance counterparts, the other side, want to comment.
Janine, Jax, do you guys want to dig in on that?
Yes, absolutely. So I would say at Ecolab, the way, I'll kind of level set a little bit and then get into more of my function that does interact a lot with sales and marketing. Ecolab, we look at it as more of a three-prong approach to what you can get into in finance. So we call it a commercial finance role, an FP&A role, and a specialized role. If you're specialized, you're probably in tax, audit, treasury, really have to know all the details for the workings of the business. FP&A, very much, I close the books every single month. I know my debits, I know my credits, I'm doing journal entries, I'm helping with plan and forecast, and I am in a commercial role. So my role, the partner that I work least with is finance, even though I'm in finance. It is marketing and sales, and R&D and supply chain. So I would say yes, finance does not like to be kept out of the loop. So we have a team, especially because our responsibility, especially when we roll up all the financials at the end of a month or end of a quarter, right, we have to report that to the street. So any surprises really hit us, and we always try to figure out what other levers of a P&L do we potentially have to pull to make sure that we can deliver how we are expected to for the quarter for our shareholders. And I would say the best thing about being in marketing and finance is because I learn as much as I possibly could have within my MBA, because I hear so much from all my counterparts. Professor Tusco, I don't know if he teaches any undergrad, but he was one of my MBA professors. And he said the best thing. He's like, there's a reason why God gave you 2 ears and 1 mouth. When you're in an organization, you should always listen twice as much as you ever speak. And I think being in that, just having that thought process every day that I go to work, that's why I think we can partner well with marketing and we can partner well with finance or in sales, because I need to listen, right? As the finance partner, I can say, sorry, that's not going to be lucrative to the P&L. We can't do that. People always say, finance, you're not as fun, right? You're always telling me, no, no, no. You're not giving me budget. You're not giving me this. You're telling me I can't spend money, right? We get a lot of the negativity, but there's a lot of it of you ask the question why, and you listen, and you really need to understand what are the things that the business needs, so you can start prioritize from a finance side of, okay, well, what things can we do first? What things do we have to do second? But if you don't understand the customer needs by listening to sales, and you don't understand what's in marketing's pipeline, then you're not as an effective finance leader. And so that's especially my job, because I'm on a team, right, that we run $2.5 billion of Ecolab's business for the US. And that's just a portion of it, and we help with all the product launches. So I am going through every product that we think we want to send out to the market, and we are running the financials, me and my team, to make sure that we think we can deliver what the business wants. We can do it from top line, and it can go all the way to bottom line. So really understanding all those inner workings. I think listening and communication is the key and the most critical component to making sure that every piece of the organization can deliver what they need to.
So from an internal audit perspective, I would say internal audit is kind of like an afterthought, right? So, the marketing people are doing their thing, sales people are bringing new business to the company, accounting people are plugging the number in, everybody is doing what they're supposed to do. The role of internal audit is to make sure that all of those things happen according to what is documented as a policy and procedures. So internal audit have different scope, right? So there are operational audit. So those are auditors who goes into the operation area and they apply a certain set of methodology. So we have like 3 phases in audit. So there is a planning phase where the auditor will sit down and plan the audit. They will review policy and procedure documentation about the area that they're going to audit. and then they meet with management to have a walkthrough, to have a better understanding of what they do, how they're doing it. Are they doing it based on the policy and procedure that was documented? Again, when I talk about policy and procedure, those are the governance documents that guide every department, every company. Those documents are approved usually by the board. So when we do our audit, we use those documents to make sure that everybody is doing what they're supposed to do. And then when we have opportunity where business are not doing what they're supposed to do, we talk to them, we work with them to make sure that they have an action plan in place to make sure that, they start doing what they're supposed to be doing. We write all of those things in a report, and we issue those reports to the business and also to the board of the audit committee. So what I'm saying is very important. That is how company, are kept out of trouble. Because we are the people who come and make sure that whatever we promise we're going to do to the customer, to everybody, to all of the stakeholders is happening, because internal audit is coming there and making sure those are happening. So again, I talk about operational audit. We also do the same thing for IT, all of the IT functions that are happening within the corporation. So we also look at it to make sure that they're doing all what they're supposed to do. We also do the same thing for finance and compliance, so different branches within the internal audit framework. So I talk a little bit about the importance of internal audit, and if you are not sure what you want to do, audit is a great place to start, because you can jump on an HR audit today, for the next 2 months, and then you get assigned to a different audit, marketing. So you learn a little bit about marketing, you learn a little bit about HR, you continue in internal audit, you're gonna soon audit the whole company, you're gonna have a whole view of how a company is supposed to function. And then, one day if you wanna pick a career, you have an idea of what you get into. So the other piece of the audit that I want to talk about is that the external auditing. So there's internal audit. You are hired by the company to be an auditor within the company. You can also be an external auditor, where you go in different company to audit their financial statement. That one also is good. So you can sample different company before you start, if you wanted to join a company. So that's what I have to say.
Thank you. So Jen, I want to wrap up with human resources, but I'm also hoping that you can bridge for these students. They're going to begin to think about internships, jobs. We know that the job search has changed. You spoke to cover letter and faxing and things like that. Now we have this thing called the ATS system and keywords and skill sets and how you bridge stories from one example of work to the other. So maybe we could do a little bit of both, with the goal that we want to finish about 1 o'clock so that the students have an opportunity to interface with each of you.
Okay, sure. That's a tall order, but I'll try to
sorry.
make that happen. No, it's okay. So just first of all, human resources, just from a functional standpoint, is the employee life cycle management, basically. So it takes an employee all the way from coming in the door, or recruiting and coming in the door, through their work experience, their training and development, all the way. We're not a hire to retire. No companies are doing the hire to retire spectrum anymore. But we do want to always be preparing people for when they eventually exit the company and go on to their next opportunity. So there's a reality base there. We know people are going to leave, but we want people to be the best that they can be, and while they're with us, and we hope we prepare you really well for the next opportunity. So let me talk a little bit about your experience, or about what you're going to come into. So like she mentioned, there's going to be any number of methods for you to kind of come into an organization. You're probably not quite at the point where you're going to do internships yet, but maybe next summer for some of you. So much of what we've talked about today really all ties together. Making connections with people. Yes, there's going to be an ATS, which is called an applicant tracking system, where resumes are going to go in this big bucket, and various people are going to look at them and try to find people through whether it's 5 or 500 resumes that might come in for a particular job. That's a way to get into an organization. But I would say from the interns that I have worked with in the last couple years, more than half have been because they've been referred to me by somebody else. So make your connections, use your parents, your friends, anybody that you can use to make some connections in whatever industry they might be connected to. The more you can just get in front of people and say, hey, here's kind of what I'm thinking about doing. If you ever run into any opportunities, please, keep me in mind. So talk to people, always be ready for that. Just be prepared and always be looking at things that you're doing in your school experience, in your life experience that can add to that resume. Your resume is going to look really light until you get experience, and that's okay. We understand that as an employer, but we want to know that you are really trying to develop yourself as individuals that are going to enter the workforce. We want to know what you're doing. Is it personal development? Is it, whether it's your job experience, the clubs that you join, the projects that you work on? Those are all things that are going to be kind of critical in trying to help employers, future employers, whether it's an internship experience or your first big job out there. They want to know kind of who you are and whether or not you're trying to evolve yourself, because we're sitting up here and we're still evolving at the various levels of our careers, and that needs to start where you are. I'm sure most of you have started already, but consider that there's more to a resume and who you are than just the job history that you have. So is that okay? Okay. Okay.
And then use this opportunity to just kind of transition out. You have a sense of what each does, the types of companies that they're a part of. And I really encourage you to use this opportunity to dig in, ask some questions about skill set, other things that might be on your mind, because these are the first folks that you can network with. Many of them are St. Thomas alumni. I've known Janine for a very long time. She's the type of person who will really roll out the carpet and just, help you understand what it's like to be on your side and the right things to do. And I'm sensing all of the rest of these folks will do the same. So I cannot thank you enough for leaning into this today. We're really excited about it. And let's distribute. And Jen, I know, use the stairs. Yeah. Jen has a broken leg.
It's not broken
Recovering.
anymore, but it's
All right.